Repeat after me. Money is easy. Wealth is possible for me. Yep, I'm Dr. Latifat. I'm the host of the Money Fit MD show. This is where we talk about all things money and mindset and how you can learn how to do money and wealth your way. Subscribe, watch, learn, take action. You've got this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another one of our recordings as part of our series of the Prepped, Not Panicked. Get your recession hour acts. I'm so excited, guys, to be here. It's such a pleasure and honor to introduce you guys to my friend, co-physician, amazing emergency medicine physician, psychotherapist, Dr. Yewande. She is an amazing human. She is the host of the podcast, Happy Without Medicine. And before I introduce you to her formally, I've met her now. I've known you for about, 2 years, a year and a half. Time's been flying. Peri-pandemic.
Yeah.
Already?
2.5 years.
It's crazy. And it's funny, before I met her, I remember seeing her pictures and seeing stuff about her. And I'm like, this woman is amazing. She's gorgeous and all that stuff. And
then you got to know me and you were like,
she's even more beautiful inside and out. And one of our fabulous friends, Dr. Lolade, introduced us. And it's been such a privilege and an honor, really, to get to know you, your story, your backstory, your front story, and all the things that you're doing. And when I was thinking about how we can be prepped for the recession, how to make sure that we as women physicians are prepared, I kind of broke it down into there's a financial piece, there's the mental and mind piece, and then there's a physical piece as well. And so when I was thinking, what do I want? Like, what do I want my people to leave with at the end of this, couple of days or this series of recordings? It was a no-brainer that I want my people to be well and happy without medicine. And, we talked about what that meant, that without medicine doesn't mean you're not seeing a psychiatrist or taking medications, but it just means that how to be well, period. So tell us about you. Who are you? And why should people listen to you right now?
Thanks for having me, girl. Honestly, when we first met, like you say, we're all doing our part to make this world a better place, right? And I just love what you do for the women physician community. We both have this mutual love about money. We love talking about money. And so we were kindred from the beginning. And so thank you so much for having me here on the Money Fit MD podcast, and also to speak to your community on how to be well during these times that we are in already. And, reports say that there are tough times ahead, but the benefit that we have of being part of the community and the benefit your members have of being part of a community like this is that everybody else's story doesn't have to be their story. It literally doesn't have to be their story. We have tons of examples of companies that were built during a pandemic, or built during a recession, built during hard times. People can thrive. And so it's things like this that set us up for thriving and being well in seasons like this. And so the first thing that I want to say is that don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. I'm going to go through some of the tips that I'm implementing for me, tips that I'm implementing in my family, in my household, tips that I'm sharing with my patients, my clients as well. And so, as Dr. Latifat said, my name is Dr. Yewande. I'm a medical doctor. I am a medical psychotherapist. My background is emergency medicine, and I did that fully for the first 10 or so years of my career. And in 2019, I decided to do a lot of the things I'm going to share today, which led me down the path of pursuing my passion and really operating in the area of life that I believe I was created to operate in, and that's the area of mental health and wellness. I trained as a therapist, and I'm the CEO of CAMI Counseling Services, where we offer mental health support for professionals, executives, women who work in high-stress jobs, and offer them strategies on how to manage their stress and how to be well. I'm also the host of Happy Without Medicine, the podcast that Dr. Latifat mentioned. And today I'm going to share 4 things. And maybe a couple of bonuses depending on how the conversation goes I'm going to share 4 things that I'm implementing, things that I'm sharing with my patients, my loved ones, on how to really thrive over the next few years, because we know based on trends that the challenges that we're facing around the world are going to be around for at least 2 or 3 years, is what the experts are saying. So the first thing I want to mention is the importance of being in touch with your emotions. And the reason why that's important is because in times like this, and we also saw this in the pandemic too, people were making a lot of decisions based on their emotions, and primarily the emotion of fear. We were seeing a lot of that. So I'm going to speak about the housing market. I think similar to what happened in the United States, here in Toronto, which is where I'm based, we saw a lot of people rushing into the housing market because of this scarcity mentality. Of course, interest rates were at all-time low, but there was this idea that if I don't get into the housing market now, I'm never going to get in, or I'm never going to be able to afford a house, or the houses are going to run out, or whatever it was. But we saw record-breaking prices of homes and just craziness that was happening. And this is when, people are making decisions out of emotions, because a lot of the things that they're doing just don't make sense. They don't make sense. If you take a step back, they don't make sense. In psychology, we like to talk about the wise mind, which is the intersection between the emotional mind and the rational mind. So if you imagine an intersection between being extremely emotional and making all your decisions based on emotions like anger or fear or whatever it might be, excitement, and you're making all your decisions based on that, versus on the other end of the extreme, being extremely logical, right? Over analyzing and overthinking or not considering any emotion. The wise mind is somewhere in between, where you look at a situation, maybe you feel a little bit of fear, maybe you feel a little bit of that scarcity, like, okay, what if I don't get in now? Maybe I need to pull out all my investments because I'm so afraid I'm going to lose everything. But then bring in a little bit of logic. And this is why, like I say, it's important to really hone in that skill of identifying the emotion. What am I feeling right now? Taking that pause, even just 10 seconds to say, what am I feeling right now? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling guilt? And is that what driving my decision right now? If it is, you might want to take a pause and bring in some logic so that wise mind is in operation, so you don't end up sabotaging your efforts. So that would be the first thing. Really understand your emotions and make sure that when you are making your decisions, financial decisions, whatever that might look like, whether it's sending your kids to private school or not, whether it's downsizing your house or not, whether it's selling your investments or investing more, make sure that the emotion driving that isn't one of fear, and you're really bringing in more logic into making those decisions. And so that's one thing that I'm currently incorporating. My husband and I, as we make our decisions, we're making sure that it's not being driven by fear, which is primarily the main thing when it comes to money.
I want to say something because I think that's a really, really important point. When as physicians, we're all familiar with running the code and all that stuff. And I have all those memories from, during residency when we would run codes. There was an incident where there was a code being run and some dude, I think it was like a PA, ran in there, was like, this is my, right? And the guy running the code was like, get him out of here, right?
Yep.
Because the key is, if you're the one running the code, you want to be, you don't want to be worried. Like, of course, as humans, you're going to be worried, right? That's a normal human emotion. But at the same time, as a code runner, you want to make sure that your decisions are not being made from that space of emotion. So it's like, okay, I got this. I'm going to be okay. Like choosing the thoughts that's going to be helpful for you, but understanding that there are going to be emotions that are going to come, and avoiding those emotions or pretending that they don't exist is not helpful. However, choosing and being intentional that your decisions are not being fueled by those emotions is going to be the key as a code runner. And also sounds like what you're explaining to us today. Is that fair to say?
100%. You know, as someone who's run tons of codes and kicked lots of people out of my resuscitation rooms, 100%. You know, your feet are planted at the foot of the bed. Yes, you're worried about the patient in front of you whose life you're about to save, but you have to control your emotions so that you get the job done. I love that example so much. Okay, so moving on to the next one, I want to talk about values. I love talking about values. I see values as your North Star, right? When you feel like you're sort of not sure what to do, pull up your values and review them. In fact, I did this with one of my patients just this past week, and it provided so much clarity as to the decisions that she was trying to make, and she was feeling conflicted. Because on the one hand, her values were going to be honored based on certain decisions, and on the other hand, they were going to be completely dishonored based on other decisions. And so having your values, knowing what you stand for, will help you decide if everybody is going left and you're feeling the pressure to go left, that no, I'm going to stay exactly where I am because this is what my values are telling me to do. So I'll use the housing market as an example, just because, you know, I love talking about housing and it's something that we've been discussing a lot in our household. But right now, we're getting all sorts of different pieces of advice. If you're a real estate investor, some people are saying continue to invest in the real estate market. Interest rates are high, but things will be fine. Keep going. We don't know how high the interest rates are going to go, but keep going. Whereas others are like, well, we don't really agree with that advice, because if your interest rates continue to go up, at some point, your mortgage is going to get out of control. You're not going to be able to pay down your house. Someone was talking about their amortization going up to like 50 years or ridiculous things like that. And so in that situation, if you're in that position where you're trying to buy a house, what do? I say go to your values. Go to your values. I have a patient who one of her values is security. She's moved around so many times during the course of her life. And she's at that point where she's like, you know what? I really just want to settle down. And so in that situation, the fact that she's not settled is affecting her mental health. It's affecting her mental wellness. I'm not going to tell her, no, don't buy a house right now, because interest rates, we don't know when they're going to bottom out. For her, her mental wellness is worth the risk. So there's no one size fits all decision in these kinds of circumstances. We have to do what aligns best with us, and knowing what your values are will help with that. And so values could be things like community. It could be things like security. It could be things like well-being, peace. It could be things like excellence. You know, there's so many exercises online that you can find, and then take it a step further and come up with a mission statement for yourself. I choose peace. I value my wellness. I put in a spirit of excellence in everything that I do. And whenever you're feeling conflicted about major decisions, go back to that value statement, and it'll surprise you how it'll help guide your decisions, such that because indecision in and of itself can cause a lot of anxiety, right? And so go back to your values, reassess them, and let them guide your decisions. And so that would be the second thing that, again, I'm currently practicing as we're also making decisions in our household.
I love that. I love that. It actually reminds me of what we did in the recession, the pandemic, when the pandemic started and schools were shut down. And I'm so grateful for all the relationships I have. I have like diverse relationships. I have friends that were like crazy all out there, and I have some friends that are like, we ain't doing nothing, right? And it's such a privilege to have relationships that are all completely different from each other. And what I remember was when our kids were coming in, I mean, here I was, physician, my kids, we have 3 kids, we're about to cower down or whatever, hunker down. My husband was an IT consultant who, at that point, he's an IT consultant in DMV, which is the California state licensing for cars and driver's license. That's one of his clients. And literally the day before the shutdown, someone from DMV literally came to our house and was like, we need your help, because all of our employees are going to start working from home on Monday. We need help with network security. my husband didn't even have a freaking contract signed yet. And he like started working with them, right? So this is what we were doing. I'm in the medicine forefront, and he is here trying to make sure the DMV network system doesn't crash down when all of the employees are going from super old school, which is what a lot of the governmental stuff is, working in person, to now being at home. So for us, we were not like perfect about, having a statement plan or value plan, but we had what we know that was important to us. And for us, we said, okay, the quality of our kids' education may dim down. Our kids are not going to be able to, we had friends that were like scheduling things online, scheduling shows so that the kids could and we're like, our kids are just not going to be able to be a part of that. But what was important to us was our kids, we wanted their mental health to be well. And we said, I want a mental health to be well, and then we're going to surround that with at least maintaining the capacity of their brain. We don't expect their brain to grow, but as long as it doesn't diminish too much, you'll be okay. And that became our North Star, right? So we were not doing technology. We still had pretty strict. And if you do technology, this is not a shaming. You get to choose your value. And if that's your value, then that's your value. For us, we made decisions that we were not going to have our kids do a lot of screen time for them, because we noticed that their personality changed when they were watching more screen than not. So we didn't want to deal with crazy kids. I mean, they're crazy based on like their parents. We didn't want it to be like hecka crazy. So we had to decide that for ourselves. But ultimately, what that meant was that we're not meeting up with our friends and their colleagues doing amazing stuff online. It was literally, we had their work on paper. Like we would literally have work for them for the day on pen and paper, like old school, because that's what we had the time to do. And they spent a lot of time in the backyard. That was literally it. And I'm so grateful that we knew what our values were. And so all the decisions we made, we were able to withhold, we were able to survive the disappointment of what we were not able to do, because our value and our goals guided what we wanted to do. And so that's something that we did, and it was helpful. And I see how that would be of value in the recession. And in fact, when I think about it, I'm kind of doing that already, because the reason why we have this is because I know what I want us to be like. My value with MoneyFit MD in 2025 is really, really clear. I want women to excel. I want us to, this is an opportunity to close some of the gaps that exist in wealth, in disparities in the physician space. And in 2025, we're going to be celebrating the fact that we're positioned to close some of that gap as a result of the stuff that we're doing. So for me, that's the value. So everything that I do from now until then is going to be based on that value. So people are going to have all kinds of ideas, and should we be hiding? Should we be blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, my goal is for us to be well, to be positioned, to close the gaps without sacrificing our mental health, which is why you're here. So all this, I'm with you. Preach it, sister. Preach it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
All right. So next point, what you got?
Okay.
Or what, if you have any comments about that, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're already doing it. You already know what your values are. And that's so important as a family, not just as an individual, but as a family. And so I really, really love that. Yeah. Okay, so the next point that I want to share that I'm doing and I'm telling everybody to do is to go back to basics. Go back to basics. And basics, not just, so we'll talk about money, and we'll also talk about, physical and mental health too. So back to basics for me looks like we're reassessing our cash flow, right? We're going back, things have been on autopilot for some time now, but we're going back to, okay, how much money is coming in? How much money is going out, and what can we do to increase the money that's coming in? So yesterday, my husband was like, I think it's time for me to ask for another raise. I'm like, okay, start writing down your list of accomplishments, because he was telling me stories about how people were messaging him and telling him how you're the best part. He's the project manager. You're the best one ever. We miss you on this project. And he was like, yeah, I think it's time for me to start asking for a raise. And so, like, okay, we have a plan for that. For me, it's like looking at my company. What can I do to increase that? And then even as a professional, as a physician, what can we do to increase that? Because yes, we do focus a lot on the spending piece, which is very important. Like I say many times, our spending is automatic. It's on autopilot. It's subconscious. So unless we actually do the work of looking at our expenses, we actually don't know how much it is that we're spending. So back to basics, looking at your cash flow. How can you increase your income, and how can you mitigate unnecessary spending in these times? Because let's be honest, let's be very honest, hard times are coming for a lot of people. Hard times are coming for a lot of people. And so this is the time to actually say, okay, some of the things that we got away with before now, maybe it's time to start reassessing those. How can we still have a great life, but doing it in a way that is reasonable, that doesn't affect the bottom line too much? So whether that's budgeting, whether that's increasing on some of your savings, whether that's deciding to do more fun activities closer to home, whatever that might look like for you. For us, it's going back to the basics, bringing out those budgeting books, reassessing our allocations for different things like our trips for next year and things like that, and bringing out the pen and paper and meeting with our financial planner, for example. We just had a meeting on Friday to discuss some of these things. And so that's really what it's about, is that maybe things have been on autopilot for you for a while, but now it's time to go back to the basics, start deciding, do I want to shop at the high-end grocery store every week, or do I want to mix it up a little bit? Just being sensible, because yes, a recession is coming, prices are going up, but what can you do on your end, on the basic level, to make sure that you are well in 2025, or well in next year, or even the year after that? Now, we talked about money. The next thing that I want us to go back to basics is when it comes to our physical and our mental health. And of course, we know this, your community there's a lot of physicians in your community, whether it's listening to the podcast or your private community, the physicians in there. We know this. We know that the basics, our fundamental human needs, are getting enough sleep, hydrating, eating nutritious food, and then for introverts like me, I need to remember that social connections, right? Social connections are so, so important. Seeing your doctor. Us physicians are notoriously bad at seeing your doctor, taking your medication, right? Whether it's medication for something like diabetes, high blood pressure, or whether it's antidepressants, ADHD medication. Take your medication, take care of yourself, go back to the basics, right? Making sure you're getting enough sleep, you're drinking water, you're moving your body, exercise. I don't think I mentioned that as a fundamental need, but these are the fundamental things, like the basic things that we need, because the truth is that if we're not physically well, if we're not mentally well, how are we going to show up at work to bring in the income? How are we going to have the clarity of mind to control our emotions so that we're making wise decisions? And so, very important, going back to basics when it comes to your physical health, your mental health, and then also your finances too.
I love it. Love. So, to the money stuff, right? And I think this is really, really important, because a lot of times we talk about set it and forget it, but it's really not forget it. It's like set it automation, but then you have to go back and reassess based on what's happening. So for us as well, like our finances are mostly, we have a lot of automated stuff. And the reason why I'm pro automation is because I tell people I'm not taking care of the money so I can worry about the money. No, I'm taking care of the money so I can live my life. So automation lets you do that. And if you have questions about automation, feel free to reach out. It's something that I cover in great depth in the money school for women physicians, because it's so important for us as women physicians. Our times may be limited. We go through lots of emotional waves based on the things we do on our day-to-day lives, and automation helps your finances and your life work without you needing to work it every single moment. So I'm a huge fan. However, with things that are happening, we're also having to go back to the drawing board and make sure what was working for us pre-recession, is this still working for us? And if you've listened to all the other videos and that's been played here, the podcast or whatever, and the ones that are going to be released, depending on when and where you're listening to us talk about this stuff, you will see that having cash is going to be really, really important, right? We talked about the whole thing about the interest rates going up. Interest rates are going to go up continuously. We know that. We don't know how long it's going to go up for, but we know that this is not the first time in history that interests have gone up about 10%. And so that's going to be happening, right? But the key is people that are going to be finding deals are going to be people that have the cash to find deals. And that is why, going back to the basics, where is my money going? What's my minimum viable expense? That's what I call it. We are doing that in our lives right now. We have a pretty healthy net worth, right? We have a pretty healthy net worth. We're well positioned. We're continuing to change the quality of the communities that we're in to help us continue to grow in the direction that we want to. But you can never, ever forget the basics. You always go back to the basics. So I love that you brought that up. And so if you need help with that, post it here. Email Dr. Latifat at MoneyFitMD. Go on my website, MoneyFitMD. Go to the top, work with me, schedule a call with someone on our team. The bottom line is this is not something you have to do alone. I want you to thrive. And we thrive so much better in communities that we're intentional about choosing. And so for you that are listening, maybe what you need is a community that's going to help you thrive, so that all the things we've talked about becomes a compass of how we live the next couple of years, right? And then when we get to 2025, we'll decide what happens in another 5 years, another 5 years, and another 5 years. So I love, love, love all the stuff that you mentioned. And I don't know if I said this on or off camera, but remember I talked about the 3 components. It's financial, mental, and mind, and also your physical. So I love, love, love that all the points you shared with us touched on that. I hear you, girl. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you.
And you know what? We might as well shut this down now, because you already spoke about my final point, which was community. So community was my 4th point. In seasons like this, you have to be so protective of what you are receiving. We kind of mentioned that in the beginning. You have to surround yourself with people who are of like mind, people who think the same way that you do, people who aren't giving into fear, people who are hopeful, people who understand the importance of values, people who understand the importance of feeding themselves well and sleeping on time and all those things, because like the saying goes, you become the average of the 6 people that spend time. If there's another saying that if you spend time around 5 millionaires, you're going to become the 6th one, right? And so community, I cannot emphasize that enough, because times like this can feel very isolating for people. I talk to lots of women who talk about the shame that they feel, whether it comes to challenges in their marriage, or whether it comes to not liking their jobs or not performing well of burnout, whether it comes to kids and are not doing well, whether it comes to money, right? They talk about this shame, but when you're in a community that's safe, similar to what Dr. Latifat is saying about the MoneyFit MD community, join the community like that, because there you will feel safe enough to talk about these things that you're experiencing. And that way you don't feel like you're going through the next year, 2, 3, 5 years alone, because that loneliness will take a toll on your mental health. It'll take a toll on your physical health. It'll also take a toll on your finances, because you're just sort of sitting in that and you're not getting the advice and the guidance and the support that you need. And so my final point, which you alluded to and gave a really nice segue to, is community, right? Surrounding yourself like that. I cannot emphasize that enough. And as someone who likes to hide in her house and just, do her own thing, it's a reminder to myself too that I need to stay connected with like-minded people who are going in the same general direction as I am, so that I don't feel alone and I don't feel lost in the midst of everything else going on around me. And so those were my points. Yeah, those were my points that I wanted to share today with you and your amazing community.
I love it. Thank you. As you're talking about community, I'm also reminded of what one of my favorite people, Ed Milet. I love him. I love his podcast and his platform. One of the things he talks about is the fact that the community is your thermostat. Right? The community is like a thermostat in the room. You're only going to rise to the level of the temperature in the room, right? If you set the temperature and it's like 90 degrees, that's what it's going to be, right? It may drop a little bit, but it's going to go up just, 90 degrees. It may go down a little bit, but it's going to go back to 90 degrees. But if you don't intentionally choose that temperature, you're going to be feeling like a victim of your circumstances and whatever is happening in your life. People are going to be speaking into your life without your permission. But when you choose that thermostat, and And I'm not going to say that our community is for everybody. We're very, very protective about what we have. That is why, in order to join our community, you either have to go through me or you have to go through one of our team members, right? They have to talk to you because I want you to ask questions, but we're also checking you out. And the key is because it is so important for us to continue to preserve the temperature in our room, because we don't want someone that's going to bring negative energy in there, that's going to, deep into bucket, right? We want people that are like, this is where I am, no judgment. Maybe I have some judgment, but I'm working on it. Maybe I have shame, I'm working on it. But the bottom line is, I know that there's more for me. I know that there is so much that I can do in this world. I know that there's so much I can do in my community. How can I grow myself so that I can achieve the stuff that I know that I'm meant to achieve? That's what our community is for. If that's not you, it may not be the right fit, but doesn't mean there's no community out there for you. It is really, really important. But don't let the world decide your community by default. You choose intentionally. Who do I want to be? What's my next level? Like 10 years from now, where do I see myself that would make me still feel so proud of who I am? And then find the community that's going to help you feel proud of who you are in 10 minutes. You don't choose your community based on who you are. You choose it based on who you want to be. That is what y'all cannot see her on the podcast, but she's snapping her fingers away. You don't choose based on who you are. You choose on who you want to be. So when I choose my communities, a lot of times I don't feel like I fit in there. I'm like, okay, they look like they may have it together more than I do. And now I've trained myself to think, okay, that's exactly where I want to be. So if you're there and you're thinking, I may not be qualified, I don't know, I know nothing about money. Let's see if I have no idea how bad my credit card is. You don't have no idea. I don't even know my debt. Like whatever. The bottom line is just relax. Don't make a decision from that space of emotion. Just ask yourself, who do I want to be? Where do I want to be? And that community that helps you be that is what you want to be a part of. And if that's Money Fit MD, it's created for you without judgment, without shaming. But I love, love, love that you had that as part of your things, because I am doing that for myself. I'm positioning myself to be in communities that helps me deliver on what I'm promising. That part in 2025, God willing, I'm positioning myself already so that I can bring those resources to our women, because in the middle of a recession, there's going to be opportunities. But if you're not in rooms where those are being made possible, you're not going to be part of it. So I'm positioning myself so that I'm a bridge for women physicians, so that in 2025, we're going to be celebrating exactly what we want to celebrate. So I love it. Love it.
Amen and amen. There's something that you said that I was like, that is good. You said, don't let the world create your community by default, right? And that default is what we don't want. We want to be intentional about our wellness and our well-being. And so, yeah, awesome.
Thank you so, so very much. So last question for you. If someone wants to find you, where can they find you? What's the name of your podcast and all that good stuff so that we can find you?
Awesome. So just Google Happy Without Medicine. And so you'll find the podcast there. If you Google Happy Without Medicine, you can listen on Apple, you can listen on Spotify, you can binge on the episodes. And if you are based in Ontario and everything that I said today resonates with you, and you're looking for a therapist who can help guide you through stresses from work, from home, then Cami Counseling is here for you. So go to camicounseling.com. So that's KAMY counseling with 2 L's.com. And I would love to meet you and see if I'm a good fit for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so, so very much for hanging out with us. I'm glad we made this happen. This is going to add such value to so many people here. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Love you. And I'm excited to see all the amazing things you will continue to do. And I'm also looking forward to having you come visit us inside our private community for women physicians, because I love everything that you do. And I do think that as this year, I'm literally asking myself, what are the things that my women are going to need to thrive in all parts of their life? And that is what I'm bringing into the Money Fit MD community for the badass women physicians that are part of us. So thank you. And I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, girl. Love you too. Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Don't forget, share. If you're listening on the podcast on YouTube, I want you to share with all the humans in your life, because I cannot reach them by myself. I need you to help us get to them so that we can enrich people, share the knowledge. And if you've loved listening to this, leave us a review. If you're watching it in a private group, you cannot share it, but you can invite women physicians to come in and be a part of learning this information that we have here. All right. Thank you, everybody, and hope this has been helpful for you guys. Bye-bye.